She hired me to clean her house, but she already knew my name, my past, and the secret I thought I buried 11 years ago. I came for a job. I didn't know I was walking straight into a revenge that had been waiting for me, one room at a time. Dahlia hadn't packed much, just 2 worn duffel bags and a heart full of silence. The message had arrived 2 days ago. Position accepted. Car will arrive Wednesday at 10 a.m. No signature, no details, just coordinates and a sense of something final. She didn't know why she'd said yes. Maybe because she had nowhere else to go. Maybe because the name on the envelope, though unsigned, was typed in a font she somehow remembered from childhood. Elegant, serifed, always used on formal invitations. The kind her family never got. When the black car arrived exactly on time, Dahlia stood on the sidewalk in front of her crumbling apartment building in the Bronx, clutching her bags like they were life rafts. The driver, a quiet older man with salt and pepper hair and a charcoal suit, stepped out silently and held up a clipboard. Her name stared back at her. Dahlia Grace Langston. She flinched. No one called her that anymore. Not since the accident. Not since the betrayal. She hadn't used her last name in years. The ride to Montauk was long, winding, and eerily quiet. Dahlia tried not to look at the sea cliffs as they curved closer. She focused on her reflection in the tinted glass. 32, tired, forgotten. Her once curly hair pulled into a tight bun, the scar on her wrist still faintly visible if she tilted her hand. The mark of a girl who tried once to disappear permanently. They arrived just past noon. The mansion sat like a knife at the edge of the world, a cold, modern structure made of glass and concrete. Its face reflected the clouds above. It looked like the kind of place someone lived alone on purpose. Or not at all. The front door opened before she rang the bell. A tall woman with sharp cheekbones, dark red lips, and a perfectly tailored burgundy suit stood waiting. Her hair was pinned into an unforgiving bun. Everything about her said control. "You're early," she said, voice cool but not unkind. "I didn't know I was expected to be late," Dahlia replied, trying to smile. The woman looked at her for a long beat, then turned. "Come in." The inside of the house was silent. Not quiet, silent. No echo of life, no framed photos, no clutter. Everything was sterile, curated, perfect. Like a showroom. "I'm Leona Calder," the woman said, as she led Dahlia through the expansive living room with views of the crashing sea below. "This is my home. You will keep it clean, stocked, and running. You will not enter the 3rd floor wing. You will not ask questions. And you will not leave the property unless escorted." Dahlia nodded slowly. "Yes, ma'am." "I'm not a ma'am," Leona said flatly. "I'm your employer. That's enough." They stopped at a long hallway. Leona gestured to the end. "Your quarters are down there. You'll find the schedule in the drawer. I expect discretion. We value silence in this house." With that, she turned and disappeared down another corridor, her heels tapping once, then fading. Dahlia walked to her room, heart thudding harder than it should have. The west wing was older, less renovated. It smelled faintly of lemon polish and memory. The bedroom was simple, white sheets, oak dresser, no mirror. But it was warm. That unsettled her more than if it had been cold. She dropped her bags and noticed the nightstand had a drawer. Curious, she opened it. A single velvet box rested inside, deep blue like her mother's eyes. With trembling fingers, she opened it. Inside lay a gold chain with a small sapphire pendant. She knew this necklace. It had been her mother's, worn the night she died in the fire. The fire Dahlia was blamed for. The fire that tore her family in half. Dahlia stared at the pendant, her fingers starting to shake. How did it end up here? Why now? She stumbled backward, chest heaving. This wasn't a coincidence. She wasn't here by accident. Someone knew who she was. Someone had placed that necklace on purpose. Someone wanted her here, and Dahlia had a sinking feeling she knew who. But it couldn't be. She was supposed to be dead. Her sister, Dahlia didn't sleep that night. The necklace sat on the dresser, taunting her with memory. Every time she closed her eyes, the past leaked in, flames licking the hallway, her mother screaming her name, the sharp smell of gasoline that no one believed wasn't hers. And then the trial, the looks, the headlines, the sister who vanished. Dahlia had spent years trying to scrape that night off her skin, but here it was again, resurrected by a pendant. At sunrise, she stepped into the kitchen, moving like a ghost. The kitchen was absurdly large, with industrial appliances and marble counters that looked untouched. She started to work mechanically, checking expiration dates, arranging silverware, scrubbing counters that didn't need it. She didn't know who else lived here, or if anyone did. There were signs of life, but they felt staged. A half-eaten apple in a bowl that didn't rot. A mug with lipstick that appeared fresh but held cold coffee. Hours passed. No sound from Leona, no other staff. Just the ticking of the grandfather clock and the slow crawl of her dread. Around noon, she found a note on the counter, written in fine cursive on thick paper. Prepare lunch for 2, dining room, 1 p.m. sharp, no questions. There was no signature, just like the envelope. She stared at the note, her mouth dry. 2 people? Who was the second? She set the table with trembling hands, laid out fine china, and began plating grilled salmon with rosemary and citrus glaze, her mother's old recipe. Halfway through arranging the plates, a cold realization crawled up her spine. She hadn't planned to make that dish. Her body had made it on autopilot. Had someone known she would? When she brought the plates into the dining room, Leona was already seated at the head of the table. She was no longer in burgundy, but in a flowing navy silk dress. She looked like royalty in exile, aloof, restrained, unreadable. The second chair was still empty. You may serve, Leona said without looking up. Dahlia placed the plates gently. Will the other guests be joining us soon? Leona's eyes flicked upward. She's already here. Dahlia turned sharply. The dining room was empty except for the 2 of them. Leona watched her carefully, as if waiting for something to click. Then she said softly, Tell me, Miss Langston, when did you last see your sister? The fork slipped from Dahlia's hand and clattered against the plate. Her throat closed. My sister died, she whispered, years ago, in the fire. Is that what you were told? Leona's voice was a razor wrapped in velvet. Or is that what you needed to believe to sleep at night? Dahlia's legs went weak. She reached for the chair, steadied herself. Who are you? She asked, barely able to speak. I'm the one who's been waiting, Leona replied. Dahlia's hands clenched. That necklace, in my room. Where did you get it? Leona stood and walked toward the tall glass windows that overlooked the sea. Her reflection merged with the sky. You asked why you were hired. The truth is, I've been watching you for a long time, Dahlia. I know what happened that night. I know what you think you did, and what you didn't do. You said not to ask questions, Dahlia croaked, her voice cracking. But now you're feeding me riddles. Leona turned, and her eyes, for the first time, flickered with something Dahlia hadn't seen before. Sadness. Maybe even love. Sometimes, Leona said softly, we hire people not to punish them, but to prepare them. For what? Dahlia asked, breathless. Leona's lips barely moved. For the return. The door behind Dahlia creaked open. And then a voice, soft, unmistakable, trembling with emotion, broke through the silence like lightning cracking the ocean. Hi, Dally. Dahlia froze. Only one person ever called her that. She turned, and there she stood, older, thinner, her once golden hair dyed dark, her hands shaking as she clutched the edge of the doorframe. Rowan, her sister, alive. Dahlia's knees buckled, and she dropped into the nearest chair like her bones had evaporated. The room faded away, the sound of the sea outside, the ticking clock, even the scent of rosemary and citrus on the plates. All of it collapsed into the shape of one woman standing in the doorway, trembling like a ghost, not sure if she should haunt or hug. Rowan. She looked like a war survivor. Her face was paler than Dahlia remembered. her eyes darker, clouded with something ancient and painful. Her hands were thin and nervous, clenching and unclenching like she was testing if any of this was real. You're... Dahlia couldn't finish the sentence. Her voice was air and disbelief. I buried you. Rowan stepped forward, her lips twitching as if caught between crying and laughing. You buried a body, Dahlia. It just wasn't mine. Dahlia's stomach turned. Her world was breaking apart in all the wrong ways. She stood slowly, shaking her head. No, she whispered. I saw the medical report. The coroner. They said it was you. Dental records. They were faked, Rowan said softly. I had help. Dahlia backed away, colliding with the corner of the table, her breath rapid. What the hell is going on? Leona, still standing by the window, answered quietly. She disappeared that night to save herself, and to protect someone else. Rowan stepped forward again, her voice cracked. To protect you. The words hit harder than the fire ever had. Dahlia's throat dried out as her mind scrambled for pieces of sense. You faked your death and let me think I killed you? No! Rowan's voice shattered the glassy calm of the house. I never meant for you to take the blame. I thought... She closed her eyes, swallowed hard. I thought they'd leave you alone if they thought you were just a broken little sister. But they didn't. They went after you anyway. Dahlia's heart pounded as memories came flooding back. The social workers who didn't believe her. The lawyer who whispered to her in court, take the deal. The whispered rumors that she lit the fire in a jealous rage, the night her life collapsed under a headline that read, Sister survives, arson suspected. All that pain, all those years, because her sister had vanished and left her to rot in the ashes. You watched me drown, Dahlia said through clenched teeth, tears pooling in her eyes. You let me fall apart. You let me think I was a monster. I didn't know how to come back, Rowan whispered. I didn't know who I'd be. I wasn't strong enough. Not until now. Leona finally moved, stepping forward. You weren't supposed to be hired as a housekeeper, Dahlia. That was just the only way she knew how to get close. To tell you. Dahlia stared at both women, her fists trembling at her sides. You let me believe I was alone. You let me build a life on ruins. Rowan was crying now. I let you believe that because I didn't think I deserved to come back. I wasn't hiding out of cruelty. I was hiding because I was ashamed. Because I knew the truth. Dahlia's voice was barely a whisper. What truth? Rowan looked at Leona, and Leona gave the smallest nod. It wasn't just a fire, Rowan said, her voice trembling. It was a setup. We weren't the targets. Mom was. Dahlia's body went cold. What? There was money, inheritance, documents Mom never showed us. And there were people who didn't want those documents to see daylight. The night of the fire. It wasn't random. It was planned. But something went wrong. I was supposed to die in the house. Dahlia was paralyzed. Her memories no longer made sense. They rearranged into something darker. Someone had wanted their mother dead. Someone had tried to burn all the proof with her. And me? Dahlia whispered. Why blame me? Rowan's eyes dropped. Because you were the easiest to ruin. No inheritance, no knowledge. Just a teenage girl who nobody would believe. Dahlia sat back down slowly, the weight of betrayal turning her body to iron. Who did it? She asked. Who wanted her gone? Rowan's voice was quieter now. That's why I came back. That's why I brought you here. The person who ordered the fire, they're still alive. Leona spoke again, her tone measured. And they're closer than you think. Silence stretched between them like wire. Dahlia looked from Rowan to Leona, then back again. You want revenge, she said flatly. No, Rowan whispered, her tears falling freely now. I want the truth, and I want my sister back. The following morning, Dahlia woke to a house that felt colder than the sea mist drifting through the glass walls. Her dreams had been disjointed, flashes of fire, of her mother screaming, of Rowan's tear-streaked face, whispering apologies that melted into smoke. When she sat up, the velvet box with the sapphire necklace was gone. In its place, folded neatly on the nightstand, was a handwritten note in Rowan's sharp, familiar handwriting. Meet me in the East Garden at 9. There's more you need to know. Dahlia stared at the words for several minutes. She wanted to rip the note in half, wanted to scream, wanted to run back to the city and pretend the last 24 hours had never happened. But something inside her, something older and angrier, kept her rooted to the floor. She had spent more than a decade trying to survive her sister's ghost. Now she had to survive her living. She dressed in silence and walked barefoot through the mansion's endless halls. The east garden was tucked behind a pair of iron gates and a dense wall of ivy. It wasn't like the rest of the house. This part was overgrown, neglected, wild, as if the estate itself was trying to forget something that had once bloomed there. Rowan was already waiting on a wooden bench under the collapsed arch of rose bushes. Her hair was down today, wind-blown and tangled. She looked less like the ghost Dahlia had seen last night, and more like the sister she remembered. Except this version carried guilt in every movement. You came, Rowan said quietly. I didn't come for you, Dahlia said, standing. I came for the truth. Rowan nodded, folding her hands in her lap like a penitent child. That's fair. A long silence passed between them, broken only by the rustle of wind through dying petals. I've been watching you for a long time, Dally, Rowan said. Through Leona's people. I saw the jobs you took, the way you kept your head down, how you refused to use the Langston name again. Dahlia's jaw tightened. Because that name killed me. I know, Rowan whispered, and that's why I have to fix it. Dahlia sat down slowly, her arms folded tightly. You said someone wanted Mom dead, that it wasn't just an accident. Rowan nodded. Do you remember Grandfather Langston? The family trust? Dahlia's heart kicked. She did, barely. A stiff old man with a cane who visited twice a year and spoke only to their mother. He died when she was 10. He left everything to Mom, Rowan continued, but the documents didn't go through until after he passed. And Mom? She didn't trust anyone. She kept it all hidden. But someone found out. Someone who was promised a piece of the pie before Mom stepped in. Someone who used to sit at our dinner table. Dahlia's breath caught. Are you saying it was family? Rowan met her eyes, voice shaking. It was Uncle Charles. The name felt like an earthquake in her chest. Uncle Charles had always been the smooth one. Handsome, persuasive, the charming businessman. Their mother used to call him the snake in the garden, but she never explained why. He hired someone to torch the house, Rowan said. But they botched it. Mom died, but you survived. I wasn't even supposed to be home that night, remember? I came back early from the school trip, Dahlia remembered. A stupid bus mix-up. Rowan had walked in just as the smoke alarms began to screech. I saw him, Dally, Rowan whispered, that night. I saw Charles outside the house, watching it burn. He didn't know I had come back. Dahlia stared at her, stunned. Why didn't you tell the police? Rowan's eyes filled with tears. Because I was 17, because I was scared, because I thought I'd be next. So I ran. Leona found me 2 weeks later. She was one of Mom's lawyers. She believed me. And helped you fake your death? Yes, to protect you, to buy us time to figure it out, but I waited too long. Dahlia felt like she couldn't breathe. Her hands were gripping the bench so hard her knuckles turned white. So what now? You bring me here, dump this truth on me, and what? Expect me to help you take down Charles like it's some kind of movie? Rowan looked down, voice shaking. I don't want revenge, Dally. I want redemption, and I want to give you back everything that was stolen. Too late, Dahlia muttered bitterly. Not yet, Rowan said, looking at her desperate, because Charles doesn't know I'm alive. And tomorrow, he's coming here. Dahlia stood up sharply, her pulse racing. What? Rowan nodded slowly. He thinks Leona is ready to hand over the estate in exchange for silence. But we're going to record everything. We're going to make him confess. And you're the only one he'll lower his guard around. Dahlia stared at her sister, stunned and silent. Rowan stepped forward, placing her hand over Dahlia's. Please, help me finish what Mom started. Dahlia looked down at their joined hands, one that had fled, one that had stayed and suffered. She didn't answer, but she didn't pull away either. The following day unfolded with a tension so thick that even the morning sunlight slicing through the windows felt sharp. Dahlia stood in the hallway outside her room, staring at the reflection of her own face in the glass cabinet. She didn't recognize the woman looking back. Her skin was pale from restless sleep, her eyes bloodshot but alert. She wasn't the broken housekeeper anymore. She wasn't the accused girl everyone whispered about. She was something in between. Half truth, half vengeance. Downstairs, Leona was already dressed in dark gray, her expression unreadable. On the long kitchen table, a small array of hidden tech lay neatly arranged. A lapel mic, a tiny camera disguised as a pen, and an audio transmitter designed to link directly to a secure laptop upstairs. Rowan entered a few minutes later, dressed like she belonged to the world again. Her hair was brushed, her voice steady. She didn't look like a ghost now. She looked like a woman with a mission. Charles is expected at noon, Leona said. You'll greet him, Dahlia. We'll be monitoring everything from the study. You only need to keep him talking. And if he doesn't say anything useful? Dahlia asked flatly. He will, Rowan said quietly. He loves the sound of his own voice, and he thinks he already won. Dahlia picked up the pen camera and clipped it to her shirt pocket. What if he recognizes me? He won't, Leona assured. He thinks you died overseas, that you changed your name and vanished into a trailer park in Idaho. He doesn't care enough to investigate further. You've been erased from his version of history. Dahlia swallowed hard. Then today, I write myself back in. The morning crawled forward. Dahlia paced the foyer, heart thudding. She rehearsed what to say, but her mind was fogged with rage and memory. She remembered Charles buying them ice cream when Mom wasn't looking, tucking $100 bills into birthday cards with that charming grin. She also remembered the way Mom always stiffened when he walked in the room, how she changed the locks without explanation, how she'd once whispered to Dahlia while brushing her hair, "Not everyone who smiles loves you." At exactly 12 o'clock, the sound of tires crunching gravel echoed up the driveway. He was here. Dahlia opened the massive front door and stepped out just as Charles Langston emerged from the back seat of a sleek black car. Time had been generous to him. His suit was perfectly tailored, his salt and pepper hair styled with precision. But there was a cruelty to his smile that hadn't aged a day. You must be the housekeeper, he said smoothly, offering his hand. Call me Charles. She hesitated for a heartbeat before shaking it. Nice to meet you, sir. Ms. Calder is waiting inside. As she led him through the hallway, she felt his gaze lingering, not with suspicion, with entitlement. Lovely place, he said. A bit cold, but then again, Leona was always more marble than fire. Dahlia didn't respond. Her pulse thundered in her ears as they stepped into the sunroom. It was strategically chosen, a place with a couch near the window, far from any suspicious electronics. Perfect for conversation, perfect for confession. Leona entered moments later, all elegance and ice. Charles, she said, voice clipped, thank you for coming. Of course, he said with a smirk. How could I ignore an offer as generous as yours? He sat casually, one leg crossed over the other. Dahlia positioned herself nearby, pretending to polish the glass shelves, but her ears caught every word. So, Charles said, let's get to it. I sign a few papers, you hand over the estate records, and we all walk away richer, correct? Leona leaned back, her tone cool. Almost. I just want to clarify one thing first. About the night my client, Josephine Langston, died. Charles's eyes flickered. That was decades ago. Still, Leona pressed. Certain details remain unclear. Perhaps you remember why you were at the property that night. He chuckled. I wasn't. That's ancient history. Come now, Leona. This is about business, not ghosts. Dahlia moved closer, wiping a non-existent smudge from the window. Leona spoke again, her voice velvet-covered steel. Because the fire inspector's report was revised. The original file indicated accelerants were used, specifically commercial-grade gasoline, not something one finds in a kitchen accident. Charles's jaw twitched. Barely. That's a stretch, he replied, suddenly less amused. Leona slid a folder across the table. This stretch includes your offshore transfers, dated 2 weeks before Josephine's death. Matching amounts to the man who died in prison last year. The same man suspected in 3 other arsons. Charles leaned forward, his mask cracking. What are you implying? I'm not implying, Leona said coldly. I'm giving you one chance to tell the truth before this is handed to the authorities. Silence fell, thick, electric. Charles laughed once, a bitter, short sound. She was going to cut me out after everything I did for this family. Dahlia froze. Charles kept speaking, his voice rising, twisted with pride and venom. I gave her clients. I gave her influence, and she called me a leech. I told her what would happen. I warned her. She didn't listen. Leona didn't speak. He went on. So yes, I arranged it. I needed that inheritance. She could have just signed, but Josephine was always stubborn. Dahlia turned slowly. Charles looked up at her, and for the first time, his expression changed. His eyes narrowed. I know you, he said. Her stomach dropped. You look just like your mother, he said darkly. But, no, that's not it. Dahlia's voice was steady despite her shaking hands. You never looked at me long enough to remember, did you? Charles stood. You... Rowan stepped into the room at that exact moment, and Charles went pale. No, he whispered, you're dead. No, Rowan said, walking straight toward him. You just lied so long, you started believing it? Charles staggered backward. This is entrapment. No, Dahlia said, this is justice. And from the hallway, the sound of a printer came to life, spitting out the full transcript of his confession, already uploaded and time-stamped. His face collapsed in on itself. For the first time in her life, Dahlia saw the powerful man look truly afraid, and it felt like breathing again after years underwater. Charles was still frozen in place, his eyes darting between Rowan and Dahlia like he was searching for a trapdoor that wasn't there. The swagger had vanished. His mouth opened to speak but closed again. Words had always been his weapons, his charm, his disarming smile, his smooth deflections. But now, in front of the 2 women he thought he had buried in the past, words betrayed him. Rowan stepped forward, her voice low and cold. We sent the recording to 3 attorneys. One of them already handed it to a judge this morning. Charles's face drained. This is illegal. I was coerced. None of this will hold... You confessed willingly, Leona interrupted from behind him. She stood in the doorway now, a legal folder in her hands. No coercion, no manipulation. And as for the evidence you tried to destroy, some of it survived. Josephine was smart. She left a document in trust with me years ago, sealed, waiting for the day this would come back to haunt someone. Your name was in it. I'll sue all of you, Charles snapped, now desperate. You think this ends with the conversation? I have money, influence. You'll all be ruined. No, Dahlia said, stepping between him and Rowan. Her voice was clear, steady. You ruined us a long time ago. This is us reclaiming what you tried to burn. Charles reached for the folder in Leona's hands, but before he touched it, she stepped back, and 2 men in plain black suits entered from the hall, silent and professional. U.S. Marshals. One showed a badge. The other produced a warrant. You're under arrest, Mr. Langston, the agent said, for conspiracy to commit arson, murder, and fraud. You have the right to remain silent. Charles didn't protest. He didn't speak. He looked at Dahlia like she was someone he'd never truly seen before, like it just dawned on him that she'd grown into a woman with teeth and a spine. They escorted him out without another word. For several minutes after the front door closed, the house was wrapped in thick, suffocating silence. No one moved. Dahlia lowered herself slowly onto the armrest of the nearest chair. Her chest rose and fell like someone had finally untied a rope from around her ribs. "He's gone," she whispered. "He's really gone." Rowan nodded, still standing, her arms crossed tightly as if afraid to let her guard down just yet. "But the trial's still coming. It won't be quick." "I know," Dahlia said, looking at her sister, "but he can't hurt anyone else now." Leona walked forward and placed the folder down on the table between them. "This house, it's part of the trust your mother left behind. I kept it quiet until the legal path was safe." Rowan looked surprised. "You didn't tell me that?" "I didn't trust you," Leona said plainly, "until yesterday." Dahlia gave a soft laugh, bitter and warm at the same time. "So this place was ours the whole time?" "Yes," Leona said. "Josephine wanted a safe haven for you both. She couldn't stop what happened, but she tried to leave you something untouched." Dahlia stood and walked toward the window, the ocean stretching out before her like a memory of freedom. Her fingers brushed the cold glass. "She always said we'd go live by the sea someday." "She tried," Rowan murmured, "and we finally made it." They didn't say anything for a long while after that, just breathed. Later, after Leona left the room to take a call from the prosecutors, Dahlia and Rowan sat outside in the East Garden again, under the same twisted rose trellis. Dahlia clutched a warm mug of tea. Rowan kept her hands curled tightly around her knees. "I'm sorry," Rowan said again, barely above a whisper, "for everything, for leaving you behind, for being too afraid." Dahlia nodded slowly, staring at the vines. "I hated you for a long time." "I know." "But I never stopped wondering if you were still out there, still breathing." Rowan turned to her. "Would you ever be able to forgive me?" "I don't know yet," Dahlia said honestly. "But what we did today, it's a start." Rowan gave a small smile, the first true one Dahlia had seen on her in over a decade. It wasn't triumphant. It wasn't proud. It was simply grateful. They sat together until the sun dipped toward the ocean, casting long shadows across the garden. For the first time in years, the silence between them didn't hurt. It healed. The trial began 6 weeks later. It didn't take long for the media to catch wind of the story. Wealthy financier Charles Langston arrested for the decades-old murder of his sister-in-law, arson, and financial fraud. Headlines screamed in disbelief, "Langston Empire built on ashes," and "Sisters reunite to expose family killer." Cameras swarmed the courthouse, searching for a glimpse of the two women whose past had been resurrected like a phoenix from flame. Dahlia stood outside the courthouse on the first morning, heart pounding as if she were the one on trial. She wore a dark blazer borrowed from Leona, her hair neatly pinned back. She looked composed, but every breath felt heavy. The building reminded her of her own sentencing years ago, when she had stood in front of a judge at 19, her wrists shaking, her reputation in ashes, her sister presumed dead. But now she wasn't alone. Rowan stood beside her, hand brushing against hers, silent but solid. Their connection wasn't smooth yet. It was cautious, rebuilt from old bones and painful truths. But it was real. Inside the courtroom, Charles sat with a smirk plastered to his face. His lawyer, a silver-haired bulldog with a reputation for dismantling witness credibility, spoke with confidence. They tried to argue manipulation, mental health issues, legal technicalities, but what they couldn't undo was the recording. His voice, his pride, his confession. Dahlia took the stand on the second day. She recounted everything: the fire, the accusations, the public humiliation, the years of hiding. She didn't cry. Her voice trembled once when she described her mother's scream in the flames. But otherwise, she held steady, even when Charles stared at her like a stranger. "Do you blame the defendant for the life you lost?" the prosecutor asked gently. Dahlia looked directly at Charles. "I blame him for trying to erase us. But we're still here." The courtroom was silent. Rowan testified the next day. She was more fragile on the stand. her voice cracking as she described the night she saw Charles watching the house burn. She admitted to disappearing, to the guilt, to the fear that kept her hidden. "Why return now?" the attorney asked. Rowan glanced at her sister in the audience, her eyes glossy. "Because I finally understood that silence doesn't protect anyone, and because Dahlia deserved the truth." After her testimony, Rowan collapsed into Dahlia's arms in the hallway outside. They cried together for their mother, for the lost years, for everything that was broken and barely beginning to heal. On the fourth day, Leona took the stand with surgical precision. She presented documents that Josephine had left behind, including a sealed letter addressed to "my daughters." It had survived untouched in a law office vault. The jury listened in silence as it was read aloud in court. "If you are reading this, it means something terrible has happened. I only pray you're still together. Never forget what was stolen from us. Never forget who you are. Langston blood runs cold in some men, but fire runs through the women. Protect each other. Love each other. And if truth ever finds the light again, make them remember we were never weak." When the verdict was announced, Dahlia held her breath so long she nearly blacked out. "Guilty on all counts." Charles didn't flinch. He sat motionless as the judge ordered his sentence. Life without parole. He didn't speak as he was led away, didn't apologize, didn't scream. He just disappeared through the courtroom door like a man being swallowed by the consequences he'd outrun for far too long. Outside, the press surged forward. Dahlia and Rowan stood on the courthouse steps, side by side, hands linked tightly. "What will you do now?" a reporter called. Dahlia turned her face toward the cameras. Her voice was calm and unwavering. "We'll go home, to the house by the sea." That night they returned to Montauk. They stood on the cliff edge as the sun bled into the ocean, the wind cold but clean. Dahlia watched the horizon while Rowan wrapped a shawl around her shoulders. "You still wear the necklace?" Rowan asked softly. Dahlia touched the sapphire pendant that now rested near her heart. "Every day." Rowan was quiet for a moment, then said, "I think Mom would have liked this place." "She'd have loved that you found your voice," Dahlia said, "even if it took years." They didn't talk about forgiveness that night. Some wounds were still tender, but what mattered now wasn't what had broken them. It was what they'd chosen to rebuild. Spring came late to Montauk that year. The wind still clung to winter's sharpness, and the ocean churned as if it, too, was restless with memory. But inside the once sterile mansion on the cliff, life had returned. Not loudly, not all at once, but in small, deliberate ways. Fresh-cut flowers in the foyer, the faint sound of old records playing in the sunroom, the warm scent of bread baking in the oven on Sunday mornings. Dahlia stood barefoot in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up as she kneaded dough with the same rhythm her mother once had. She wasn't sure why she started baking again. Maybe because it made the silence feel like comfort, not isolation. Maybe because it was the only time she felt her mother's presence without pain. The house was no longer a prison of memory. It was becoming a home. Rowan came in behind her, barefoot as well, her hair tied in a loose braid. "You made the sourdough," she said with a faint smile. "I didn't trust you with it," Dahlia replied, her voice dry but playful. "I tried it once," Rowan confessed, reaching into the fridge for butter. "Turned out like a brick. I nearly cried." They exchanged a glance. There was still distance between them, moments that hurt too much to touch. But there was laughter now too, and with laughter came healing. They ate breakfast by the large window overlooking the ocean. The water reflected the rising sun, and birds skimmed the surface like they'd always belonged. As they ate, Leona walked in carrying a stack of legal documents. "I have something for you," she said, placing the folder on the table. Dahlia raised an eyebrow. "Is it another family secret?" Leona allowed a rare smirk. "Numbered just something overdue." Inside the folder were 2 sets of papers. One was the official transfer of the Montauk estate to both sisters under their joint ownership. The other was something even more surprising, a settlement agreement. Charles's assets, now liquidated, were to be distributed under court order. After the trial, Victims' restitution and trust claims had moved forward. With Leona's help, the sisters would receive a portion of the Langston estate their mother had originally intended for them. Dahlia stared at the final page. This doesn't fix what happened. No, Leona said, pulling out a chair. But it gives you a future you don't have to borrow from the past. That evening, they held a small memorial in the garden, just the three of them. They lit candles and placed a photograph of their mother between the rose bushes Rowan had begun to restore. Dahlia read the letter aloud one more time, her voice catching only once, near the end. Then she folded it gently and buried it in a box beneath the soil, beneath the new roots. We were never weak, she whispered. In the days that followed, Dahlia found herself looking forward instead of back. She started working with a local legal aid group, helping women rebuild their lives after wrongful convictions. Rowan enrolled in therapy and, for the first time in years, painted again, her canvases vibrant, wounded, and alive. One night, long after the house had gone quiet, Dahlia found herself standing in the hallway, facing the west wing where she had once slept as a stranger. The drawer was still there, empty now, but she placed something inside it before closing it again. A new velvet box, holding the sapphire necklace. Not because she wanted to hide it, but because she no longer needed to wear it to feel whole. She turned off the light, the hallway bathed in moonlight, and returned to her room. Her room in a house that no longer whispered of betrayal, but of survival, sisterhood, and reclaimed legacy. And for the first time in her adult life, she slept without fear. ChatGPT сказал. In my opinion, the ending of this story is both powerful and quietly redemptive. It doesn't try to erase the pain or pretend that justice can fully repair what was lost, but it offers something deeper. Restoration. Dahlia and Rowan's journey wasn't just about exposing the truth or punishing the guilty. It was about reclaiming their voices, their bond, and the future that was nearly stolen from them. What I appreciate most is that the ending doesn't rely on grand gestures or fantasy resolutions. Instead, it focuses on healing through small, intentional acts. Baking bread, repainting, lighting a candle for their mother. These are quiet triumphs, but they're the kind that last. And when Dahlia puts the necklace away, it symbolizes everything she's learned. She no longer needs to carry the weight of the past around her neck to know who she is. It's a story about sisters, about truth rising from the ashes, and about how surviving isn't the same as living. But once you find the courage to face the fire, you get to choose what you build from its remains.